Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's right, we're talking about Trap. Trap is a 2024 American psychological thriller where the audience follows a serial killer evading a police blockade while attending a concert with his daughter. Now, I've got a ton to say about this movie, so let's just go right into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. First is plot. Does the movie follow a comprehensive story arc and is plausible within the world that has been created? Now, I really enjoy the plot of this movie. Part of this, I feel, is because there have not been a lot of creative, individual, unique movies lately. I feel a lot of movies are coming from sequels of older movies, especially older successors in the 80s or 90s, and they're remaking them, or they're just based off a comic book or something. This movie was unique. It had a nice plot. I feel something that was done really well in this movie was the balance between the main character having to try to figure out how he's going to escape from the police, how he's going to get out of this situation, but also he has a daughter and he has to be a father and he has to try and get out of this in the best way possible without her finding out or him going to jail. And I feel the plot was done so well to make you go back and forth between these two different situations. Something I think is being ignored is how this movie made you, in a way, root for a bad person. The main character is not a good guy, and there's nothing that he does that really makes you go, oh, this guy is such a good guy, maybe I should root for him. You actually think quite the opposite. He's a bad guy, he's a serial killer, he's done some pretty awful things, but I found myself rooting for him to get out. I did not want him to get caught. And in some scenarios, I was hoping he would get away. And I think that's a hard thing to do. I think if you gave somebody a script saying, hey, we need you to convince the audience to like a serial killer without him doing anything good, that's a hard thing to do. This movie did that. I really enjoyed the plot. I thought it was unique. Second is attraction. Does the movie have an interesting premise with a high entertainment value? Again, I thought the movie was unique, and I thought it had an interesting premise. From the trailer, you know that he's a serial killer. From the beginning of the movie, you're thinking, okay, how is he going to get out of this? I thought that was very well done. I thought it was a very interesting premise. Third is theme. What message or truth is the movie trying to convey? I don't think this movie really had a message or truth. If it did, it just kind of went past me. It was more of a just entertainment, trying to get into the head of a serial killer and figure out how he gets out of the situation. I don't really think there was a message here. Fourth is dialogue. Is there a real feel to the conversations? Interesting enough, M. Night Shyamalan has always kind of had weird dialogue in his movies. Usually they're not great and it kind of takes away from the movie, but for this movie it works. It makes sense. And a lot of times I would say his father-daughter relationship and some of the conversations he have are kind of cringy and not really realistic. However, you know that he's a serial killer, so it kind of gives you this feeling like he's pretending, and it just works. So something that doesn't really work normally worked really well for this movie. Fifth is acting. Are the characters convincing? Now, Josh Hartnett, who plays the main character of this movie, that dude can play a crazy person. He did such a good job being a psycho. He had all these close-up shots where he would do certain facial expressions that were either just creepy or you could tell what he was thinking without actually saying it. He really killed this movie. I thought he carried it. He had such a good role here. Now on the opposite side, Salika Shyamalan, M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. Okay, in the singing parts, it's what she does. She actually is a singer, so those were fun. But man, when she got into the movie and had like a little bit of a role, good lord, these were bad lines. She could not act to save her life. Luckily, Josh does such a good job that you kind of just ignore it, but it's almost glaring as well because he's doing such a good job, and then she would say some lines, and you're like, good lord, like, please do not act again. But Other than that, Josh did a really good job, so the acting was pretty good. 6 is cinematography. Is there creative use of lighting, setting, and wardrobe to convey emotion? The cinematography in this movie, I enjoyed it. I thought emotion-wise, he did a good job of keeping you tense, keeping you thinking about what was going to happen next, but also trying to figure out what is going on psychologically, who is this guy, how does he operate, what has happened. I thought emotionally I was tense through the movie, so the cinematography was done well. He also had some shots that, again, he usually does in a movie, and sometimes they're weird, but for this, it just fit. Like, he will do shots where he will point you right at the actor, and when they're having a conversation, it'll flip 180 and you're looking right at them, almost like a POV shot. And it's kind of weird sometimes, but for this, it like kept you on edge. It was weird enough. It's not a normal shot done in cinema, so it kind of just also kept that tension that you already had throughout the movie. So I thought that was really well done. I thought the cinematography worked well for the type of movie that was being played. 7th is editing. This is all about the pace of the movie. Now, the movie is an hour and 45 minutes long. I thought that was fine. I really don't have a problem with it. It wrapped up when I thought it needed to wrap up. I guess maybe it was just a little long, because sometimes I was expecting something to happen and it wouldn't happen, which I'm not really complaining about. But it did lead to like wondering when the movie was going to end. But then it did, and I thought it ended on a really good note. I enjoyed the pace of this movie. I didn't really have any problems with it. 8th is soundtrack. Now, normally I don't really have anything to say about soundtrack, but soundtrack is kind of a unique role in this movie because they are going to a concert. It's important that the music is good, and I thought the music was good. Something that was also kind of done in the editing was that they had really long shots of the concert. And normally I would probably complain about it, saying they're too long, but actually I thought it did a really good job of convincing you that this concert was real because they played pretty much a real concert going on, and that's exactly how they look. And having those longer shots just kind of embeds you in the situation more. So I actually like the soundtrack of this movie more than your normal movie. 9th is directing. Now, personally, I feel the director is in charge of the previous 8 categories. He is the one that has to give the go on all of them and put them together to make a really good movie. Now, the director, M. Night Shyamalan, is pretty famous and somewhat controversial because he had a point where he was making, in the early 2000s, he was making really good blockbuster hits, and then he had a stretch where he's been making movies that people don't really like, and so he kind of has got ups and downs. Personally, I see the ups and downs, but I do like that most of the time he is coming out with a unique movie that usually has a pretty interesting premise. Now, M. Night Shyamalan has directed 16 movies, including this one. He's directed Praying with Anger, Wide Awake, The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, The Village, Lady in the Water, The Happening, The Last Airbender, After Earth, The Visit, Split, Glass, Old, Knock at the Cabin, and then finally Trap. Now, as far as this one goes, he's such an experienced director, but he almost just does his own thing. I feel he kind of ignores all the criticism, so it's never like he's just improved because of experience. I feel he just does what he wants and doesn't care what people say. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. He's had really high highs and really low lows. I feel this one is somewhere in the middle between high and average. I think it's a good movie, but he's obviously done better movies, but this one is, I feel, one of his good ones. 10th is Time. Does it stand the test of time? Now, this one I feel is going to suffer a little bit in the test of time, just because it's a lot like a whodunit film, a lot of those like crime films where something will happen and then the suspense of the movie is figuring out who killed who. And in this movie, it's the same way where you have all the suspense of figuring out what is he going to do, how is he going to get out of this situation. But the problem with time is that once you know how he gets out of it, it kind of brings that suspense down. And so the movie is always better the first time you watch it, but the more times you watch it, the less good it gets. It gets a little worse. So I feel it'll still be a good movie, but it won't be as good as how I feel it was the first time I watched it. Next is the ratings. Rotten Tomatoes critics gives it a 54. The audience gives it a 64. And IMDb gives it a 62. Personally, I don't know why people are hating on it so much. I feel the 60 is a little low. I thought it was a good premise and executed fairly well. I feel it's at least a 70. I don't know why people are hating on this movie so much, but I thought it was pretty good. Alright, finally for the rankings. Now for 2024 on the entertainment side, it's going to go second, just below Fall Guy and above Deadpool and Wolverine. Now below Fall Guy wasn't really that hard because Fall Guy is a movie meant for entertainment and it just does a really good job. Now Deadpool and Wolverine, honestly, this was kind of a toss-up. It was hard to decide which one I would enjoy better, and I would honestly say that I just chose Trap because it has more rewatchability because I enjoyed the premise. Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm just not a Marvel guy, so it wasn't as appealing to me. It wasn't as good of a movie. I probably wouldn't watch it again nearly as soon, and that's what put Trap over Deadpool and Wolverine for me. Now, for the cinematography side, it's actually going to be second as well, just below Civil War and above Deadpool and Wolverine again. Now, below Civil War, again, this one was really hard for me. I would say they're pretty even as far as their cinematic aspects and what makes them appealing, just in different areas. But that idea of time is what really put Civil War over Trap for me. Trap is just going to... I feel it's going to have a harder time aging. Civil War, it will have somewhat of a harder time because it's just so focused on a certain time period and is appealing in a time period. But those emotions that cinematically it makes you feel are going to always be there. That suspense that's important in Trap, I feel it's going to wade over time. Now, for the decade of the 2020s, unfortunately, it's going to be exactly the same just because I haven't done a list. I haven't done a movie outside of 2024 yet. For all time on the entertainment side, it's fourth, again, just below The Fall Guy and above Deadpool and Wolverine for the exact same reasons as 2024. And for cinematography, it's going to be third, just below Civil War and above Toy Story. Now, I put it above Toy Story because for cinematography, I really focus on the emotion aspect of it. And Toy Story was really entertaining, but the emotions are higher and more present in Trap than they are for Toy Story. So that's why I'm going to give it one more above Toy Story. Now that's all I've got for Trap. Please let me know what you thought of it. If you understand why people are hating on this movie so much, let me know if I'm missing something. But please suggest the next movie I should do. Otherwise, I'm Mr. Majoritarian. Stay classy, San Diego.